माननीय मुख्यमंत्री Mamta Di, honored dignitaries on the stage, my colleagues, distinguished guests, and the colleagues and the most gracious and loving and warm and passionate audiences of Kolkata. আপনাদের জামাই বাবুর নমস্কার. I wish to express first my extreme gratitude to the Chief Minister for having invited me here today and giving me the satisfaction of achieving what I could never achieve on the cricket pitch, a hat-trick. Today marks my third consecutive visit to this prestigious international film festival, and I'm delighted to be here yet again with not only Jaya, whom you've all lovingly called your Dhonni Mein, but also with your Nati, Abhishek, and Nath Bow, Aishwarya. Perhaps many of you do not know, but all four of us, Jaya, Abhishek, Aishwarya, and myself, have all had the very proud privilege and distinction of having worked with Bengali directors, some esteemed, very reputable directors here. And we hold that experience with great respect and great regard. Thank you so much, the Bengali cinema and all those directors that we've had the privilege to work with. Having spent almost 7 years of my early life here in Kolkata during the 60s, it is quite obvious that the mind is filled with a flood of memories. As Kavi Guru Rabindranath Tagore has said in his delightful version of Robert Burns' Scottish ditty, Auld Lang Syne, পুরানো সেই দিনের কথা ভুলবে কিরে হায় ও সেই চোখের দেখা প্রাণের কথা সে কি ভোলা যায় আইরে 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 একটিবার আইরে সোখা প্রাণের মাঝে আয় মোরা সুখের দুঃখের কথা কব প্রাণ জরিবে তাই. And to those from the international delegation that have not understood the Bengali, the translation is, can we ever forget memories of those days gone by? Those moments when eyes met and we shared our intimate thoughts. Come once again, dear mate, return once more to my heart, so that we may share our joys and sorrows to our heart's content for a second time. But of memories on some other occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, Bengal has just celebrated its most renowned festival, the spectacular Durga Puja. The Devi, who comes to our homes every year during this wonderful autumn festival, is also perhaps the embodiment of all that the Indian woman has aspired to emulate through time immemorial. To be like Durga, a woman of strength, yet infinite gentleness, a woman of passion, yet extreme wisdom, an ideal mother and a wife, a woman, in short, of boundless care and substance. For the 100 years of India's cinema history, our women protagonists have similarly reflected a great sense of innate courage and spoken out fearlessly against injustice and tyranny, long before the suffragette movement of the West in the 19th century and the 20th century. Indeed, the radicals in Great Britain, before they became well known in India, or the American feminist movement of the 60s became fashionable. As United Nations Ambassador for the Girl Child, personally for me this subject then is very close to my heart. Indian cinema has always been a reflection of the ethos and ideology of our society. And we have to view the issues it has thrown up on the subject of women and their position in a manner that is culture and situation specific. Each decade has presented its own brand of women in our cinema. And the multi-dimensional portrayal of female characters tackling social, psychological, and philosophical issues has been the biggest draw of our movies. Our cinema has primarily been a mode of mass entertainment. Not only has it expressed but also shaped the changing scenarios of India's aspirational and societal sentiments in a way that no other popular art has ever achieved with so much impact. Our cinema has influenced the way people perceive and deal with various aspects of their lives, including the status of women in our homes or in the outside commercial world, where they have stepped out to work and build careers. Thus, cinema and society have always influenced each other. The vehicles to accentuate this influence have varied, from costumes to music to items of luxury. But the most crucial medium has been that of characters. The mindset, thinking, apprehensions, or the prejudices of a vast variety of female protagonists have been, by and large, the same as those of the general public at a given point of time. When Dadasaheb Phalke, the father of Indian cinema, released his Raja Harishchand in 1913, many of you may not know that women from middle-class backgrounds were forbidden from acting in movies, and it was left to male artists to play female characters. Times have changed by the 1930s. Devika Rani, Zubaida, Mehtab, Shobna Samarth, all women from affluent families, entered the movie business and changed the face of Indian cinema by redefining the importance of women in films. In the early years, screenplays in Bengal that were adaptations of famous works of fiction by writers like Sharat Chandra Chatterjee and Rabindranath Tagore were already known for their sympathetic attitude towards women. So were several scripts written in that period. In fact, they often pursued provocative and relatively taboo subjects. Pramathesh Barua not only introduced the alluring Kanan Bala in New Theatre's Mukti way back in 1937, but also dealt with the forbidden topic of divorce. A year earlier in 1936, Himanshu Roy's Achut Kanya, made for Bombay Talkies, starring the legendary Devika Rani and the newcomer Ashok Kumar, had as its central plot the unhappy love affair of a Harijan girl and a Brahmin son. Both these films were highly successful at the box office. Achut Kanya, Jeevan Prabhat, Nirmala, Alamara, Chitralekha, Parinita, among others, are some of the movies of our early cinema history with women-centric themes relevant to that era. In terms of remuneration, and this is very important to note, in terms of remuneration, status, and roles, the leading ladies of that time were on par with their male counterparts. And I'm sure that there are many leading ladies here present on stage today that would appreciate this fact. The beautiful and the free-willed Devika Rani, Zubaida, Mehtab, and Shobna Samarth paved the way for several women in our films, and through the years, a number of fresh stars have brought about a sea change in attitudes as leading ladies. They made it possible to essay innovative women roles in Indian films, especially in mainstream cinema. Filmmakers like Bimal Roy, Mehboob Khan, Rishikesh Mukherjee gave us memorable heroine-oriented films. Bimal Roy's Sujata took forward the theme of yet another Harijan girl falling in love with a boy of a higher caste. While in Bandhani, the female lead was not afraid to murder her tormentor and go to jail. Many of Roy's other films were inspired by the novels of Sharat Chatterjee, like Biraj Bhau, Devdas, Parinita, all based on the courage and fortitude of simple-minded, middle-class girls and their innate belief in selfless love against all opposition in a male-dominated and patriarchal society. In Rishikesh Mukherjee's Guddi, Abhiman, and Khoobsurat, ordinary women held their own against societal pressures and male egos. Mehboob Khan's Mother India is perhaps one of the strongest political statements on a woman who can do anything to establish justice while remaining within the framework of her marriage and motherhood. She defies being just a biological mother in order to don the mantle of being the mother of the nation when she shoots down her own son and saves the honor of a woman in the village. Although there is no particular way of portraying the Indian females on screen, it is evident that their roles run parallel to those of women living out their lives in our constantly changing society. Therefore, there is no doubt that the Indian woman has come a long way over the decades, not only on screen but also in real life. Filmmakers like Shyam Benegal have reflected this change and given us flesh and blood female protagonists in films like Ankur, Bhumika, Sardari Begum, women who have stood their ground through several vagaries of their times. Govind Nihalani in Rukmavati Ki Haveli, Drishti and Hazar Chaurasi Ki Maa etched women characters of myriad hues. If Drishti viewed the souring of a marriage from a woman's point of view, Hazar Chaurasi Ki Maa observed a woman trying to cope with the death of a son who gets embroiled in politics. Ketan Mehta's Mirch Masala demonstrated the strength of females when a group of village womenfolk unitedly bring about the fall of a tyrant police officer. Muzaffar Ali's Umrao Jan paints a delicate picture of the 19th century courtesan who, despite her multicolored circumstances, is a skilled poet and artiste. Prakash Jha's Mrityudand witnesses a new face of the educated Indian girl willing to rebel and fight for her rights. Women in Mahesh Bhatt's films, especially Arth, make strong statements against male domination. Likewise, Gulzar's Andhi, Mausam, and Koshish are testimony and noteworthy for their female characters, be they in politics, confined in a brothel, or living with a physical impairment. In Bengali too, filmmakers have created strong female characters. Tapan Sinha in several of his films like Jyotgriho, Adalato Ekti Mein, and Nirjan Shoikote, among others, has placed great sympathy on his female characters. Jyotgriho dealt with marital discord, the bone of contention being the woman's infertility. Nirjan Shoikote essayed the plight of 5 elderly widows, while Adalato Ekti Mein focused fearlessly on a rape victim and her fight for justice. Ritik Ghatak's classics, Meghe Dhaka Tara and Shubharna Rekha, are considered path-breaking films about the agony and fortitude of Bangladeshi refugees, shown through the eyes of women protagonists. Women in Satyajit Ray's films defy any kind of stereotyping. While conventional narrative films are complicit in producing women as subordinates, the creative imagination of Ray always presented positive, dynamic, and alternative representations of the fairer sex. His films had several female characters of great sensitivity and substance. In Pather Panchali, Sharbajaya, the mother, holds the family together through deprivation and poverty. Charulata, based on Tagore's novella, deals with marital discord with great artistry. And Devi is still considered an impassioned protest against religious bigotry, where a young bride becomes the victim of her father-in-law's conservative fantasy as he imagines her to be an incarnation of the goddess Kali. Strong female roles have also been witnessed in several of Mrinal Sen's films. In the year 1959, the film Neel Akasher Niche, he demarcates with great sensitivity a beautiful brother-sister relationship between a Chinese hawker and a Bengali housewife, witnessed against a volatile political background. Punoshcho, made in 1961, emphasized the heroine's economic need to go out and earn a living, a theme that was later tackled by Satyajit Ray in Mahanagar. Contemporary filmmakers here like Aparna Sen, Gautam Ghosh, Rituparna Ghosh have also given us strong feminist films with complex and penetrating subjects. In the last 2 decades, the visual representation of women has changed dramatically. Whereas the typical westernized woman was considered a vamp a few decades ago, associated with vice and venom, today films show women in Western designer clothes as part of India's globalization. Rather than any implied judgment on their morality, these clothes indicate the affluent lifestyles of the new middle class on which these films focus. The content with traditional culture, however, is never overlooked. Socially, they may adorn themselves with the latest Western fashions in vogue, but when it comes to marriage and the meeting with prospective in-laws, it's back to the sari. From the 1990s, along with the changing roles of women in India, the female protagonists began to change drastically. Girls today are far more conscious of their rights. They are far more outspoken, liberated, independent. They're educated, have innumerable employment opportunities, many of them outstripping the men in their accomplishments and qualifications. And this is now strongly reflected in Indian cinema. Films recently released have redefined the Indian woman. From movies like Astitva Lajja, Chandani Bar, Page 3, to Dor, Fashion, No One Killed Jessica, Kahani, these characters have had many varying shades that moved away from preset stereotypes of the typical wife or vamp or the sacrificing mother. We live in a world overflowing with information, but we seem to face a growing scarcity of wisdom. And what's worse, we confuse the two. This barrage of readily available information has also created an environment where one of the worst social sins is to appear uninformed. Ours is a culture where it is enormously embarrassing not to have an opinion on something. And in order to seem informed, we form our so-called opinions hastily, based on fragmentary bits of evidence and superficial impressions rather than true understanding. This is why the storyteller is all the more urgently valuable today. A great filmmaker helps people figure out not only what matters in this world, but also why it matters. A great film, through symbol, metaphor, and association, helps us interpret information, integrate it with our existing knowledge, and transmute that into wisdom. Thank God, women refuse to be taken for granted any longer. They stand tall in society and in our films as individuals in their own right. In conclusion, I go back again to Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore and quote what he said in his ballet Chitrangada way back in the year 1892. The English translation reads, "I am Chitra, no goddess to be worshipped, nor yet the object of common pity, to be brushed aside like a moth with indifference. If you deign to keep me by your side in the path of danger and daring, if you allow me to share the great duties of your life, then you will know my true self." I am unable to restrict myself from narrating a small incident that took place with me. I anchor a show called KBC, and I had a contestant in the shape of a woman who was very young. She came from the rural area of India, very poor, very disconnected with the rest of the world. She was studied or made to study only up to the 7th standard. And her father, when she wanted to educate herself more, told her, "Why should I waste more money on you by educating you further, because you're going to get married and you will be of no use to me. She objected to this phrase. She fought against the family. She went out of the house. She continued to learn on her own, educate herself. She went to live with her grandmother, who treated her even worse than how she was at her home, made her do all kinds of menial work. But she continued to educate herself, and she landed up in the hot seat at KBC. Ladies and gentlemen, this lady won 50 lakh rupees in the contest. When I asked her what she was going to do with this money, she said, I'm going to take this check to my father and tell him that a daughter also is an asset to the family. I feel very privileged to be here today, and I want to thank you and the Chief Minister for inviting me. Thank you. Before I go, Sister, got dressed with emotion. I love these chadors that are given to me. What are they called? Uttariyo. Okay, I refer to it as a chador. And when I saw Robi Ghosh in the poster of Gopi Gayan Bagaban, I was tempted to narrate a small tale that he used to tell us about the chador. This is a story about, the times when there was zamindari, and the old zamindars who lived in their havelis would finish their dinner and then dress themselves up and sit in the coaches and go out to the courtesan to listen to dance and music, wearing the gajra around their wrists. And the wife would come and put a chador around the neck. And the zamindar used to go out. And when he came back after visiting the courtesan, the chador used to be missing. And she would ask, "Chador kothay?" And he was nonplussed. And, obviously, it had either dropped somewhere or he'd given it away or lost it. The next day, the same thing happened. And this continued for about a week. Every day he'd go out for these recitals. And every day he'd come back and the wife would ask, "Chador kothay?" And he had, no answer. Finally, on the 8th day, she took out a beautiful chador and said, "This is the last chador that I have. Please look after it." So he put it on very grandly, went off in the buggy at night. And throughout the journey and during the time when he was sitting with the courtesan, he kept talking to the chador. "Hey, dhoro, ekhane, hey, thik ache. Dhoro achi, hey, chador, dekho. Jane na, kothay?" And with great delight, he came back holding the chador like this home. And he called out to his wife, "Hey, shuno, kothay tumi? Hey, dekho, chador, chador ache." And the wife gently looked up to him and said, "Ito to thik ache, kintu dhoti kothay?" So what I want to say is that the chador is safe and so is my dhoti.